Hi everyone, we're another week in Mutant What's the Mutants on Twitter and Facebook, and now today we have very special guest, House of S podcast, and we have Dylan here, and Regina here.
Yeah, that way.
Hi.
And well, we're very happy to have them on the show. I personally have been in some of the groups they have on Facebook. Maybe a lot of people that follow us also have, and they're like a great community of X-Men fans, which is exactly what we're trying to bring here. So that's great. Before beginning the show, I always do this every week, but I want to remind people of the Black Lives Matter protests because they're still going on, and there's been less social media like push up into this, and I think it's a great thing to inform yourself. Just try to see ways in which you can help, see ways in which you can go to protests and help people that are going, donate for face masks or stuff that they may need in the link that is right below. And we're getting to the show now. Okay, so first of all, I want to ask you both, maybe have a little trip at memory lane and tell me how this thing started, how the Facebook group started, and I don't know what made you. Okay. Oh, before you both answer, I want to make note that our own Ross is also an admin of the Facebook group, and he's here. And okay, so I want to ask you how that started and what is your experience with it. Whatever you want to tell me about the Facebook group first.
Okay. I'm a huge X-Men fan, like I think all five of us are. And a few years ago, I started joining a bunch of different X-Men Facebook groups and was pretty active in a lot of them. And because I was so active in a few of them, people that created those groups asked me if I wanted to be a moderator or an admin. And so I joined. And after a while, I kind of didn't like the way that the groups were ran. And so I was in a few different ones, but I eventually just left all of them because I didn't like how certain things were done. And I just created my own and just decided to go off of the Marvel title House of M and just make it be House of X. And so that's where I came up with the name, and I created that group. And eventually, I don't know how long after, but the amazing Ross became an admin of the group because he was so active in the group. And for a while in the group, we made posts where we could meet the members of the group. And one of those first posts was I wanted to make sure that I showcased one of our female members that was very active. And at the time, it was Regina, and I actually did not even know what Regina looked like because for the longest time, Regina only had a picture of Elektra as her profile picture. But when I would make these posts, I asked people to give me a selfie so I could post them. And then I got to see what Regina looked like. And as Regina continued to be more and more active in the group, I asked her if she wanted to help run it with me and Ross and the other people that we have.
So that's it in a nutshell. I'm not sure. How long have I been adminning now, Dylan? About a year, maybe?
I think about a year.
Yeah.
The group has been around for 4 years, but...
Right. So it was a genuine pleasure to be invited into the admin group, and I like to think I contribute still.
No, you do.
You contribute a whole lot.
And it has been... Dylan and I have become very close friends the last several years. And now he's one of my best friends, just day to day. We don't live near each other or anything, but we talk a lot.
Well, I mean, it's not that far. We're 3 hours away. That's closer than a lot of people.
That's true. Definitely closer than Ross. But we don't get to see each other every day or anything. But we do talk frequently and message each other. And, it's been nice.
And this is a goofy thing that I want to point out, but the Facebook group House of X had the name House of X in 2016, and
They
the
can
House,
sue you.
the House of X storyline did not start until 2019.
Right. So a lot of people thought that, the House of X line came first for some reason. And I was like, well, the group's been around for like 4 years.
And how is that? Okay, you changed the name or like how is that?
No, we had the name in
Oh,
starting in 2016.
House of M. Okay. So it was like, you can sue Marvel right now.
I wish.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I
It
will
was a
say,
lucky branding
Yeah.
happy accident.
For legal reasons, I'm kidding.
I will say in 2019 at C2E2 when they announced House of X, a lot of people went crazy. And I think, wasn't C2E2 2019 when I got to meet you, Michael?
Yep, so it was.
Yeah. And so, when they announced that, I wasn't at the Marvel panel when they announced it, but I know that I got 27 texts or Facebook messages that were like, did you see this? They stole our name.
That's super funny. Okay, I want to ask our two members, like Rose and Gabriel, what's your experience with the Facebook group? Generally, just so we get on the Facebook group and then we go to the podcast.
So I've actually been part of the Facebook group for, I want to say about 2 to 3 years now. It is actually through the House of X Facebook groups that I got recruited into be a Comic Watch writer. It was, I think, the House of Marvel Comics, which is affiliated, that Cody had posted about Gwenpool. And since I was reading it, that kind of led into me doing the reviews for it and led me here. I absolutely love the groups. I have been a part of a couple other X groups. And the one thing that always impresses me about House of X is how quickly the admins will stomp down any form of bigotry. Where I've seen, unfortunately, there is a toxic section of the fandom that just is not welcome in House of M, and that's always made me feel welcome in all of the House of M groups, House of X groups. Sorry.
It's fine.
Yes. Yeah, no, I've been in the group for what, about 2.5 years, something like that. And I'm still in a lot of other X groups for various reasons. I'm a serial poster of art. I post it everywhere. That's kind of how I got into found the X-Men Facebook. It's just the weirdest thing. And I mean, up until that point, I don't have friends that I share this fandom with in real life. So it was just me. I mean, my wife knows I'm into X-Men comics and but it's not her thing. So up until that point, I didn't really have a means of expressing or talking about things that I think about when I read these books. And House of X was one of the first ones that I discovered. I mean, I discovered a whole bunch at the same time, but that was the first one that I discovered. And it was like, for lack of the better word, drugs, because there's all these people that are actually interested in the same thing I'm interested in, that I've never been able to really talk to you about, and I just went bananas from there. And it's become like almost a full-time occupation. And ultimately, that also led me here too, because through these groups, I ended up at Comic Watch and being the press editor and doing reviews and everything else. So, ultimately, this group is responsible for me making my way to where I am right now. So, yeah, it's you think about it, the power of it's really a good example of the good thing that social media can do. We all know there's terrible things about social media, but this is definitely one of the best things about it. The sense of community in a group that's safe for everybody, not just straight white men. That you can all talk about things that are fun and express opinions as long as they're not harmful, and actually get all of that stuff that bubbles in your brain when you read the comic out and share it with other people. It's made me a more stable human being because I'm not constantly thinking about that anymore. I can actually focus on other things. So yeah, I mean, I really enjoy myself.
That was beautiful. I
Listen,
somebody
he's
had
giving
to
me like
say it.
$50 later. So Dylan's giving me $50 later. So.
You said everything perfect.
What?
I will-
I didn't get that. Yeah. I think since I asked everyone, I should also tell my side. I I enjoy it a lot. I think it gives. I come to these things and to Comic Watch probably too from like creating a core page maybe 3 years ago, which was Liliana Core, and you know the groups part of it, the House of X, the House of various characters part of it, because there's a lot of characters. For me, has been considerably healthier than getting the page out, because like with a page, especially since a certain amount of people, you get a lot of people that maybe do say things that are woof, and sometimes I don't have the energy to like me by myself put it respond to everyone. Like that's not something that I have the energy always, and to like to like moderate. And I feel like there's a great part of joy and of like getting with other people together in the fandom in a space where there's a lot of people that are moderating and that are like putting things together and different things. And well, on that part, I want to ask you both before we go into the podcast about the different things you do on the pages, because you do like this whole thing about which character should this character date, or like the meme of what could your remove your X-Men card and stuff like that, which I think is very fun and gets people involved. And that is those are some great ideas. So I want to know where they come from.
Well, like you were saying, I love that I have 8 other people helping me admin or moderate the group. When I first started it, there was only me and one other person, and then we added 2 other people. And I just really feel like for something as big as House of X Facebook group is, I needed to have more and more people help, but I needed people with different backgrounds and different
time zones.
Yeah, time zone. Yes, that is definitely another reason that Ross is amazing, because there's a lot of stuff that can happen when I'm asleep. And so I have at least Ross and one other moderator that are in different countries than the rest of us. And then the other admins and moderators that are all in the US, we're all from every time zone, basically, from east to west. But another reason that I love having these 8 other people help me is because everyone else has their own ideas of what should be a good topic starter. Like you were saying, characters that are matched up with each other. Our admin, Shoshana, does that. It's Matchmaker Monday. And I just like having so many people come up with different ideas, because when I first joined Facebook groups, I liked doing that when I wasn't the moderator or admin. I liked having tons of topic conversations. I wanted people to, like Ross said, everything that's bubbling up in my head, I wanted to post it, and I wanted people's ideas from that. And so then I created a group so I could do that more, but then I wanted other people to come up with topic starters like that. And yeah, it's another reason that I have the 8 people help me, because I need their ideas, even if it is ideas that I don't like. There's constant conversations between all 9 of us, and we don't always agree. But yeah. Regina, do you have anything to add?
Like the take your X-Men card thing, I actually got that from Twitter, but some of the other stuff that I come up with, it just seems really random. So for a while I was doing a caption this, and I'm going to get back to it. I've been a little bit busy lately. But basically, I would just find a random comic book panel that looked funny and take out the word bubbles and then have people submit what they thought, could be funny in that from that panel other than what was actually said. And that was really, that was amazing. There's a lot of innuendos, so I had to kind of figure out, okay, what's not dirty. So I could get a little bit of a better response. But, other things just seemed to come naturally to me. I was a writer when I was a kid. I love to write stories and create stories. And I think that kind of helps me come up with different ideas now as an adult when I'm helping out with the group.
That sounds great. I think I'm gonna ask you about the podcast now, because you both decided to from this group that I think everyone has some idea by now if they didn't know it earlier. Oh, by the way, we got a lot of comments with love for you both, so I wanted to put it out there that we got I don't know,
working, guys. You guys must have spent a lot of money on this.
At least $100. Yeah, we got a lot of love from the comments for you both, so I want to bring it all. A lot of people saying just hi to Dylan and Regina, a lot of people saying putting hearts emoticons and stuff like that, and someone saying that that they thought Marvel stole the title from the group.
Maybe they did.
Maybe they did.
Who knows? Maybe Jonathan Hickman was reading the group and was like, oh, this is a great title. I gotta steal it now. Okay.
I just wanted to mention real quick, like Duna mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of other Facebook groups too, because just like Duna was mentioning, we have so many different members in House of X that want to talk about certain things. We have lots of other groups because there is some fans out there that only like to talk about certain characters, or maybe they don't want to see a bunch of posts about Wolverine or whatever in House of X. We have a bunch of other groups for almost every character. So we have a House of Storm, a House of Gray, a House of Frost, a House of Iceman, and House of Domino. And like Michael mentioned, I know there's people that love everything Marvel that has nothing to do with X-Men. So we have a House of Marvel comics as well. So if you're watching this and are not a part of the groups, we have a whole bunch of House of groups. So just search for in groups, House of, and you can find almost any X character or Marvel. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I discovered the House of Rasputin first, so that checks out. I just went from my character. I don't care about everyone else. Kind of. So okay. Everyone sets the names. If you post House of, and you're an X-Men fan, you're probably gonna come up with all those things because they come quickly on there. So now you can go search, but after the show. So, okay, so the podcast that you both started, and that's part of why we invited you, is the Facebook group, and other part is the podcast. I have loved what I have listened so far. You have done mostly it's reviews, but with really funny reviews. I think for me, it's I'm cooking and I'm having fun listening to you both. So that's my takeaway. And there's funny and lighthearted, but reviews of the comics that are releasing, except the one you invited, that's exclamation point, who's a cosplayer who's really great, and I recommend everyone to search for them. And okay, so for the podcast, how did it start? And well, for example, how inviting that's come into place, or things you want to do in the future, or inviting more people. Open question.
Go ahead, Dylan.
Okay. Well, in the summer of 2019, I was actually invited to be on a different podcast show that was already established. And so I was on that show for a year, and 6 months into it, the podcast show was looking for a female to be on the show as well. And I had become incredible friends with Regina. And so I asked Regina if she wanted to join that show. And so she did at the beginning of 2020. But as the year went on, me and Regina had decided and had discussed here and there that we felt more comfortable doing our own podcast. And we already slightly had this House of brand. And so we thought it would probably be successful. And even if it wasn't, we still just like talking to each other, talking about comics. So we just decided at the beginning of the summer this year that we were going to start our own podcast. And it was going to be about comic book reviews, but there was also going to be a few other episodes that would not be about comic reviews. And I'll let Regina talk about that.
Okay. So something with both of us is that we do have a lot of similarities, but we don't agree probably, I would say, at least 40% of the time. So we do have very different opinions at times. So we kind of, go back and forth, and we thought, well, even if it's just, like us and our families listening to this podcast, we like it, and we're going to do it. But I do know a lot of people are not really current with the current comics, or they have a different focus than maybe we do, but they still want to support us. So something that we talk about is, the House of X groups are basically about the fandom. As an X-Men fan, I only know one other person that's really into X-Men that I'm actually good friends with in real life. Everybody else basically are on my online friends. My brother and my sister enjoy it, but they're not as gung-ho about it as I am. So when we started creating the podcast, we started talking about what drew us into the comics. And part of it is the fandom. And like Michael is one of our favorite people and we love him. And we thought, well, there are people who aren't really current with the comics, but they still want to be part of, different parts of the fandom. So we said, well, for those people, we could have invitations to cosplayers and artists. There's a lot of fan artists that aren't really professional artists, but that do create a lot of X-Men art, and, comic book owners and, fanfic writers, and basically anybody who is part of the fandom. We thought it would be great to invite people like that to just kind of partake of it and be part of something a little bit bigger than what else they might have going.
That sounds amazing and sounds like we're invited someday.
Yes. I just wanted to add more to what Regina said. We just wanted to really have just random fandom episodes where we could try to connect to everyone. And like she said, just to add to what she said, I've asked a few people who work at comic book stores, people who own comic book stores, if they've wanted to be on it. We're going to have some really, not like professionally famous, but I know online famous artists that want to be on the show. One that I can say, because everyone else is not 100% right now, but we're going to have Ty Ramsa on an episode with us. And everybody who's an X-Men fan right now loves his art. So, yeah.
That's super cool. Okay, so maybe with this one, what would you both want to do more in the future in the podcast? You already kind of said, but what are you interested on? More like your plans are set, but what do you want to do?
Well, we want to hopefully keep expanding. For a long time, I just didn't really have anybody I could really talk to about my interests and things that I like as far as comic books and things like that. My husband is more of a DC guy, but he's not really into comics. He was when he was younger, but not so much now. But he knows that I love it. And So he's just encouraged me, hey, keep doing what you're doing. And he knows I'm having a lot of fun. So I do hope to keep expanding what we're doing, keep doing, like we have a House of Tea in the House of X group. We do a live broadcast every now and then, just goofing off. And it's always really fun. And people make comments about it. They'll come in and they'll join in the conversation. So that's always a fun thing that we like to do. So just keep growing, basically.
Yeah, I just like having fun with Regina when it comes to the podcast. So as long as me and Regina are having fun, that's really all I want. I know some people, when it comes to podcasts, just want to make sure that they end up becoming like a household name or that they get sponsors or things like that. I don't really care for that. I love my Facebook groups and I love the podcast. I just think the podcast is just a way to maybe reach a few more people that don't necessarily like Facebook. But yeah, I just want to keep having fun talking about X-Men comics, and that's really all that I want.
Part of why
What'd you say, Ross?
I have a question.
Okay.
So, you guys, obviously Facebook's where all the groups are. But you actually have a presence on other platforms as well. I know House of X has got a working Twitter account, and it's expanding day by day. And Dylan, you've worked Instagram for a while. Has that helped funnel people to the group? Because it's not something that I can't pay attention to. Obviously, do you think it has, or is that the intent with those other two platforms, or are you creating those other two platforms as something separate?
Well, I years ago created a Twitter account for House of X, but then decided not to do anything with it because Twitter confuses me. And I did create a House of X Instagram page before Regina and I were going to do anything with a podcast. And I was trying to use that as a way to funnel more people from Instagram to join the group. And then I just decided to change both the Twitter and Instagram into a podcast account. I do know that at least with Twitter, it has funneled in some people. I know there's some people from Twitter who reached out to Regina and asked about like what the link was for the groups. And I know that via Instagram with my own personal Instagram account and the House of X Instagram account, I know I've gotten at least a couple dozen people to join the groups. So it is working a little bit. And I always just want to try to find more ideas and fresh takes on things for people. So I'm always trying to get more people to join the group. And it's not just because I want the member count to go up. I don't care about the member count. I just want to have not just the same 30 people posting every day and getting their ideas. I want to get everybody's different ideas.
30 people post? Are you sure? Now, that's the one thing about the group, though. It's one of the most interactive groups. So what I do is I don't spend a lot of time in other groups, but what I do look is if I put a piece of art somewhere, I'll usually put it in 3 other places, minimum. And then I'll go have a look at the interaction on it. Not necessarily commenting, because, it's usually just a picture. Not everybody has something to say about it. But in House of X, it'll generally get the highest reaction count and the highest comment count out of all the X-Men groups that I'm actually in. Some, and I mean, 1 or 2 others that are, the count is high. You're talking 20,000 people. But in House of X, you'll still get better interaction in that group. And I think it's a very positive thing.
So I do want to mention, sometimes inherently the X-Men create ideas that can be in conflict for some people. One of the things that I like best about our group is that we do have sometimes conversations that are uncomfortable. Most of the time, most people are able to express themselves without being hurtful to other people. But we do not permit people to make harmful comments to specifically to other members. And I have seen that in other X-Men groups that I was in, and I was very uncomfortable. So when I joined the House of X, after about 6 months, I was like, I found my people. And it was just so nice to be able to talk about things without being attacked for race or gender or whatever people would say, just because I had a dissenting opinion. And especially as a woman, sometimes some of the other groups maybe have things that are very uncomfortable for me. So finding this group, even before I became an admin, I made several times posts saying, I love this group so much because just the people here are usually very kind, and we have great conversations, even uncomfortable conversations. And it's important to me to be able to do that without having those online attacks, kind of. Twitter specifically is, I don't post there that much because I have seen some things get a little out of control. But just our group, I think, is very conducive to having something for everyone without being harmful.
Safe conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to add, to kind of go along with the podcast and us having the random fandom episodes. We also wanted to have those because, like Regina said, we wanted people to be able to support us, but then also feel comfortable. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because when it comes to our House of groups, I take pride in, again, I don't care what the member count is, but I want people to feel comfortable and not feel weirded out in the Facebook groups that they're in. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I feel like how I mentioned earlier, how I did the meet the member and got to see what Regina looked like for the first time. I feel like when she and I had a private conversation about me asking if I could post about her and have a selfie of her, I feel like I helped Regina feel 1,000 times more comfortable, like on Facebook in general, because like it mentioned, she used to have an avatar as her picture. And then soon after that, she started using her own picture again. And I kind of feel responsible for that as like the group, not just me. Like the group itself made her feel more comfortable. And I just want everyone to feel that way if you're a member of House of X, or if you're even listening to our podcast.
I would agree with that. I did have that avatar for years because I just didn't want my face to be out there. But our group was so supportive in general that it did help me become more confident. I do know a few members who they love our group, but they don't post because they're still afraid. And, I just let them know, you don't have to post. You can like away, but we do want to promote a space where people can be comfortable and not be attacked for who and what they are and for having dissenting opinions that may be uncomfortable. We don't always get it right because we're human, but we try, and we have discussions in the background about, what may be uncomfortable. Is it okay? Why should we leave it up? Why should we remove it? We check in with each other, and we don't always agree.
Nope.
We actually disagree quite a bit, but I think that's one of the things that makes our group strong, because we do have such a varied amount of voices and backgrounds. And I think Dylan has done a lot to really promote that among the admin group.
A lot of what you just said, Regina, resonated a lot with me because, for example, I don't have a personal Twitter. And the reason is mostly because I'm a woman with a strong opinion online, and it's a place where people are kind of encouraged to have opinions, but then attack for it. And it's just works weird for me. Like, I don't want to be put in that position. So I think it's great that you try to do that in the group, because sadly, even if the internet is like for everyone and everyone can comment things and everything, public spaces on the internet can be very like, I don't know, misogynistic, but not like only misogynistic.
Toxic.
So,
They can be toxic. Let's call it what it is. They can, especially
yes.
for women, especially for members of any minority.
And
as white men are safe on the internet, the rest, everybody else isn't, and it's just a fact. It's just the way
Yes.
it is.
And I felt that a lot with the core page, to the point of which I have left it kind of abandoned, part because of it. So I feel like it's nice to have a place where people can form community with a work towards that being different in the base. Because like it doesn't become different in at least I don't see it becoming different in public spaces or public communities. Because like a lot of the pages of the core community and everything were like we're very open, but they really don't put measures so people don't get into uncomfortable and hard situations. So I feel like a private group where you kind of have a lot of people doing the moderating stuff, it works better. And I'm glad that you're doing that work or discussing things and etc. Like even from a personal point, I'm glad of hearing this.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
absolutely
we don't
agree.
randomly delete people by accident. That never happens. No, we've gotten better. Come on now.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree with what Duna was saying. We actually have a comment talking about how public spaces can absolutely be toxic, and I do agree. Like House of X is kind of private. You guys, we have the admin team helping moderate, but you can go in and you can join, and it's easy to get in. But having that moderating does make a world of difference. I have dipped my toe into the X-Men fandom on Twitter, and while I have found some amazing people, I am also terrified of going in too deep. I feel like it is just like a lawless wasteland at times, and I like hiding in my House of X group and my corner of X Twitter where I have awesome people.
Yeah.
Because there's less moderating on Twitter. And I've seen a lot of people, like I said, I found some amazing people on the X-Men side of Twitter, and I've seen some of the stuff that they've had to put up with. Being attacked because of their gender or gender identity, being attacked by their sexual identity, being attacked by their race, and it's just, I don't see that in House of X. I'm assuming because of the awesome job these moderators do. And it is a great place to be.
Yeah. The difference is that on Twitter, that the singular individual is responsible for moderation. So the fact is that if people involved don't moderate themselves and think they can say whatever they want, that's how we end up with a disaster. In the groups, I don't like the word gatekeeping because it has such a negative connotation, but essentially, okay, keepers of the peace is a better term at the end of the day. And the thing is, we're not constantly badgering people to not do stuff. And yes, we are constantly deleting stuff that's inappropriate. The amount of advertising and things like that, it happens. But the fact of the matter is, over time, the longer you're in the group, the more you realize that it's safe. You don't ever get that feeling on Twitter. What you do on Twitter is you build the community of people that you can interact with. You don't expose yourself to everybody, and then as soon as you see somebody there that doesn't look right, you have to block or change or mute or whatever. It's not the same in the group. You can actually be you're in a large space with a lot of people that are very different from you, and you feel safe because you know that you can put your opinion out there, and as long as it's not racist or the bigotry or whatever, it'll be heard and treated with respect. That doesn't happen on the open internet, guys.
Yeah.
You can't expect that to happen on Twitter.
Yeah, one of the, like I was saying, one of the reasons that I created House of X was just because I wanted everybody to have like a safe place. One of the reasons and I'm sure everyone else joined Facebook groups, like Ross said, I don't have too many people in my own real life that read X-Men comics. So I wanted to find people that did, but I also kind of wanted to slightly find a family. So I feel like when it comes to Facebook groups, you're kind of looking for a family. On Twitter, you're just looking for friends. But I feel like with the Facebook groups, at least for my part, I was doing it to want to find a family and wanting to make sure that even though family doesn't always get along, that you're still nice to each other. And so, yeah, that's why I created the groups. And don't like Twitter that much.
Yeah, it's weird. Twitter in general, from what I've seen, has a very low opinion of X-Men Facebook groups, to be quite honest. And I mean, and I do understand that, because there are some groups out there that are absolutely horrible. And I mean, but the fact of the matter is, there are groups like ours that do foster a sense of community. Yes, you can find community on Twitter if you curate your feed very carefully, and etc. etc. But it's easier. I don't know if it's because of my age. I think age does figure into it. You look at the age group that uses Facebook versus Twitter, much younger demographic on Twitter. You understand? Now, at 45, I'm like an old man on Twitter. It's like, don't you see those quotes? You're over 40. What are you doing on Twitter? You know what I'm saying? Whereas on Facebook, the demographic is stretched. The age limit is much wider.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a difference of Twitter versus Facebook. I'm more like the work of people moderating shows, because
Yeah.
like I have a Facebook page and I have gone through the same set of like harassment campaigns and stuff that I don't want to get into now because they're like harsh. But I was like almost leaving the page a lot of times because it was too much for me. And I think that it's not exactly that it's Facebook or Twitter. Maybe it's easier in Twitter to get into discussions, possibly, but like it's not the platform, but that you actually have people involved in like doing the moderating work, which sadly is still necessary. Like if you don't have people watching over bigotry in internet spaces, bigotry flourishes a lot. As Ross said, against everyone who is not a white man. So like that happens. And I think the theme is a little dark, so I want to go to a more positive theme. If you all want, if you want to keep talking about this, I'm not gonna stop you. But I think it's dark, and I don't know. I want to ask stuff about maybe some positive stuff about your experience with the fandom in the way that why do you like X-Men? I want to know that. I pretty much want to know that. And I don't know, maybe some general stuff like who's your favorite X-Men or stuff like that. That is very fandomy. That is very like it's usually your presentation card in these places. So it's like, why don't I see you now?
You go first, Christina.
I can ask everyone here.
Oh,
like
okay.
Gabriel and Ross also answer. It's fine. We're having fun, and also people know us more this way.
Well, my dad was actually a huge X-Men fan, and he was actually collecting for quite a while until my mom made him stop. And she made him sell like a whole box of his X-Men comics, and then she found out later they were valuable, so she was mad at herself. But you know, I was adopted by my stepfather, so I'm Hispanic. My mom is Mexican, and my natural father is Mexican, but my stepfather was white, and he adopted me when I was 8 years old. But we were very close, and he really fostered my sense of social justice and, you know, taking care of other people and standing up for other people. I grew up in Alabama, and it was difficult because everybody there is in a box, and nobody could put me in a box, and they kept trying to figure out, well, is she black? Is she white? And I would say, no, I'm Mexican, and they didn't even know what that meant. So it was interesting growing up there, but I was constantly being othered. So when I got a little bit older, I met a guy at school, and he was sharing with me some of his trading cards. And I remember it was the first one he showed me was of Psylocke in her ninja suit. And I was like, this chick is badass. And then he also showed me a picture of Cerise from the Shi'ar, and she was beautiful. And I was like, this is, you know, who are these people? And he was like, these are X-Men characters. And I was like, I don't remember those. Dad stopped collecting. You know, he stopped collecting way back in the early 80s, I guess the mid 80s. So some of these characters hadn't even really been introduced yet. Psylocke had, but not in that form. And that was around the time that the X-Men cartoon had come out. So my friend started giving me some of his comic books to look at, and then I started buying them on my own. And I really identified with this idea that, you know, you're part of a world that hates and fears you, but you still want to create something better. And that really resonated with me. And Rogue specifically resonated with me. She was a Southern woman, and I consider myself a Southern woman. And I felt like I understood her. She couldn't be touched. She wanted to be touched, but she's got this barrier and she can't. And mentally, I think I was kind of going through the same thing for a long time. And then also Moonstar, because Moonstar was Native American, but at the same time, you know, she didn't want to necessarily conform to what Xavier wanted her to do. And she was ready to stand up to him and say, you know what, you can't take away my identity just because, you know, we're part of this group. I'm still something more than just this group. And I still have my own sense of self and my racial heritage. And it's really important to me. And I'm not giving that up just because I'm going to be part of your students. So there's a lot of different reasons, but I would say that's the top reason I think that X-Men still continues to resonate with me to this day, is that feeling of not quite belonging, but now I have my tribe and they're my people.
When it comes to me and X-Men, I started getting into it mainly because of the cartoon. Around the same time that the cartoon was coming out, me and my older brother, we would always play action figures of like everything that wasn't X-Men. But then when the X-Men cartoon started coming out and action figures started being made from and for the cartoon, me and my brother spent so much time playing action figures. I didn't really get along with too many other kids when I was younger. So like my best friend was my older brother. And what we had in common besides being brothers was the fact that we loved X-Men. And so I just spent a lot of my time of having fun in the X-Men world of playing with action figures. And he would read the comics, but since I was 6 years younger than him, I didn't really read them. I would look at pictures and that would be about it. But even when I was younger, I did know that I was gay. And so I felt different. And I felt like that's why I sort of didn't get along with other kids. And I just feel like Regina said, the mutants being feared and hated for being completely different, even though I wasn't out. I felt like everyone probably knew I was. I know my family knew that I was, but they didn't tell me until I told them, and then they were like, yeah, we've known. So I connected with these heroes in that way. Another goofy way that I connected with the X-Men was when I was younger, I was one of those kids that took forever to learn how to tie my shoes. I don't know why it didn't make any sense to me tying a string. It made no sense. I couldn't remember it. I couldn't get it. But the one way that I was able to get it was my older brother. One of the times when we were playing action figures or something, he told me that I needed to pretend that one shoelace was Rogue and that the other shoelace was Sauron, and that they were just chasing each other in the sky. And then she ends up tying him up. And for some reason, again, I think I might have almost been in like 5th or 6th grade before I knew how to tie my shoes. And that's how I was able to learn how to tie my shoes, because it makes sense at all. There was a time in my life where I stopped reading comics. I had a lot of personal issues, and I got away from comics, and I decided to start reading them again. And one of the characters in books I started reading again was Shatterstar. And when I was younger, I always loved Shatterstar. And when I played those action figures with my brother, I always wanted a sense of family. I guess there might have been a part of me when I was younger that felt like I didn't have very much close family. I think maybe again, I was gay. I felt different from everyone, including my family. I would always have Longshot, Dazzler, and Shatterstar when I would play with action figures because I wanted this sense of family. And I love the fact that in comics they hinted at Shatterstar being with Richter in X-Force comics, but it was the 90s. They were not going to have that come out as a couple. And then when I stopped reading comics and came back, when I came back was around the time that Shatterstar was brought back into X-Men comics and X Factor. And when they brought him back, they announced that him and Richter were a couple. And since I was coming back to comics and getting out of a really hard time in my life and getting back to the comics, I felt like Shatterstar coming back gay was just my sense of knowing that X-Men is my place. And yeah, that's why I love X-Men. Like, they've always been there for me. And my favorite character is Warpath, but that's like a whole nother hour-long discussion.
That's a whole show. We don't have time.
My favorite character is Warpath.
So someday we have to invite you just to talk about Warpath.
Yes.
Make a note.
Mutant Watch, Warpath with Dylan.
I'll hop in next. Why not?
Yeah.
So I accidentally fell into being an X-Men fan. So I discovered comics at an early age in a supposed, apparently weird way. I didn't realize it was weird until much later. I grew up in the Bronx, New York, and for like trick or treating, when you go to a comic book store back then, they would give you like a comic book in your trick or treat bag, and I became a big casual fan of Gen 13. And then one day during a street fair, I found one of the comic book stores, and they were selling a bunch of cheap comic books, and I just grabbed a whole bunch of what I thought was Gen 13 comics, only to find out it was actually Generation X. And pretty much from the moment I started reading them, I absolutely just fell in love with the universe and the message. Like what Regina and Dylan was saying, like I kind of always had a bit of that outsider thing. I was the not realizing I was a gay kid. I was the guy who was the as close to goth as you can get in a Catholic high school. So it was a lot of just me not having a place. And even in my group of friends, I was the one Marvel comic fan amongst a group of anime and manga fans. So I really related to the characters in the comic books. And it was something that I didn't realize that it was something I could find friends through until I came actually to the House of X groups. I just always assumed that my comic book geekery was something that was going to be just for me, and that's all it was going to do. And actually, my favorite character has changed since doing this actual live stream. I would have sworn up and down that Cannonball was my favorite X-Men to the day I died. And after many, many conversations, particularly with Duna, and us discussing me trying to get Steve Orlando to write a Shatterstar and Richter mini, I have officially caved, and Richter, my queer Latinx X-Men character, who has sometimes questionable taste in men, is now my absolute favorite character and is me made into comic book form in my mind.
I can't top that. So
That was beautiful.
Yeah, that's a really good story. I don't know, mine's boring. I found comics a good old-fashioned way on a spinner rack. I was looking for new Teen Titans comics at the time, and I picked up X-Men 166 because of the cover, and that was it.
And there was no going back.
There was no going back. Red Brood Saga backwards. Read it in reverse because we didn't have comic shops and we didn't get them sequentially, so you had to go find them. So I found 166, 165, 164, 163, and then hopped forward. And just hasn't stopped since then. I took a break from comics as a teenager for a little bit because involved in other stuff. But I've come back to it every single time, and the group has actually gotten me more back into comics. I'm now buying more comics than I used to. My favorite character is, oddly enough, Gambit. When I started being a fan, for all the wrong reasons, with womanizer, all the terrible wrong things about being a fan of the character. But as I've gotten older, he's I've come to view him as a character that is constantly.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're getting a lot of noise, and I don't know if do you all get in noise or not?
Yeah.
I was getting a little bit of noise when Dylan was talking. Yes.
Maybe we can. I don't know.
The subliminal soundtrack we're putting on, you will join the house of you will watch. Don't worry about it. No, I don't know what it is. It's
I think we can like try to mute ourselves to see who has the issue, so we can.
hold on.
Okay. Okay.
Somebody went away there. Right at the end. It's gone.
Okay. Okay, fine. So this is the first time we have to do this, so there was no practice. I think the noise is from Regina. So if you want, Regina, when you talk, unmute, and when you don't talk, mute. Sorry.
We still love you, Regina.
We love you a lot. I'm okay.
Where were we?
You were talking about that psycho.
I liked Gambit for all the wrong reasons, and I did. He was cool, and it was pretty superficial. But as the characters developed, he's proven time and time again he's a character that constantly tries to do the right thing and fails. You can just look at X-Men Red. First page he's on, somebody dies, but he's still trying to be the hero. Understand? And I relate to that. I relate to failing in life, but still trying to do the right thing. And that's why I like the character. That and the fact that now he's turned out to be the only one that can actually have a healthy relationship in the fandom. But anyway, that's another show as well. He's always been my favorite character. Here we go. Like I said, I can't top any of these fantastic stories that you guys had.
Yeah, those were great stories. I feel weird, like I should tell mine now, but those were great. Both Regina's story and Dylan's story and Gabriel's story that I kind of knew a bit. I cannot remember a bit of it, but those were beautiful. And actually, there's some people in the comments that say that the stories were beautiful and fantastic. So thanks for sharing with us, first of all. And then I'm very happy that the new favorite character of Gabriel is Richter. That's an achievement of mine. And so I can see myself in a lot of your stories because I was in the closet pretty much when I was little. So pretty much a lot of why I was drawn to X-Men comics was because I was very isolated from people, but those felt like really like closer to a friend, some of these characters, and I was very drawn to that. And being a trans kid and being like really, really, really in the closet, I was relating to people in weird ways. So I think I have professed this a lot. I think I tell some of this in other episodes. And I think the fact that my favorite book was New Mutants was because they're going through some weird shit. And I was going through some weird shit in my life. And it was very, the things that were happening inside me and the things that were happening outside of me were really not connecting a lot. So having this kind of a story where you have a bunch of kids that go through the most weird shit ever was like very connecting with me personally. And my favorite character is Ileana. I feel I have not changed that yet. And even if I kind of don't like most of the stories with Ileana in the modern days, like I don't like a lot of the stories. I don't think they're going too deep into her, except maybe the Extraordinary X-Men story and the Dead Souls story, probably. But the rest of them, I don't feel like they. But for the classic comics of Liliana, I was very drawn to part of childhood trauma, professing childhood trauma that I didn't know I was. Like when I was reading these comics, I was not like, I was 13, 14, and I was not like, oh, I'm processing childhood trauma. That was not how that worked. But pretty much it was what was happening. And I feel that's why she's still my favorite character, because I still can relate to a lot of what drove me to her. And maybe because I'm queer, I'm like waiting a lot for them to give Ileana a girlfriend soon, because because that was also something that was very much hinted at in the comics in some places, and I want to have my story of like now I have Ileana explicitly queer and having a relationship and etc. in the comics, and I can read that because like I also want that. Not only Shatterstar fans, okay?
Yeah, it's very much just like how I was happy that Shatterstar finally came out and was with Richter. I was going to say, I know a lot of people that I'm not particularly a Ileana or Magic fan, but I have a lot of internet friends or friends from the group who I feel like they love Magic for the exact same reasons that you do. They were either queer or they had very awful childhood trauma, and they haven't realized it until they became an adult. They're like, oh my gosh, this is why I like Magic. So I feel like I've heard your story like a ton of times, and I think that's great that so many people can connect to a character in the same way, type of thing. I don't know why, but yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's a lot of work. Like for me personally, it's mostly when Louise Simonson was writing her, like the part that led to Inferno that really touched my heart. But I know for other people it's like the first part, the first Claremont part. But it's a lot of work to get these kind of stories into books. And okay, so what I want to ask you both now that I know your stories are very beautiful, I think a lot of people are enjoying them. So thank you so much for sharing again. Is okay, so we do this show, and I feel like a big part of it is like, at least for me, it's like I want to touch into themes that are not always touched into the X-Men fandom, and that's why, or at least not always touched like focus it. They're always like in the sidelines, and that's why we did gender and sexuality in the X-Men 2 shows for get deep into what was happening there, because a lot of people connect with the X-Men for, for gender and sexuality issues, but that's like an afterthought and as something that is talked about but not the center of it. And we also, the first show we did was on the mutant metaphor, like what the fuck is this, and and we also plan to do disability in the X-Men show sometime soon, and I'm trying to find other things that we can talk about, like editorial work or like other things that maybe come as timely. And I want to ask you both what you would want to see in that vein of exploring themes in the books of the X-Men. I know a lot of people do that in great ways. I know Jem Miles exploring the X-Men does that too in a lot of their shows. I know it's happening a lot, but I want to know if you lack something, if you want something to be done here.
I might have to think on that for a second. Regina, you go.
Trapped.
Thinking, something to me that is not often highlighted in the books is the relationship between siblings. Like we see it now and then, like with Cyclops and Havoc, and with Betsy and Brian. And I think that's an interesting topic with how people relate to their families in real life. And then you also have this idea of adopted families. So we have Cable and Hope, and we have, it just left my head. But we do have a lot of adoptive type families, and it's not necessarily the same thing as a found family, which is something like is really big for Joss Whedon's work. But in general, with X-Men, we do have this idea that we are connected and we can choose the families that we have, not necessarily the families that we're born into. And I think that's something that could be explored a little bit more than what we actually do see in the books.
My choice, I think it might not be that big of an issue, and people might not want to see it as much as I do. But for myself, I actually don't have a lot of gay or queer friends in real life. I have a whole lot of straight friends, and it's great. When it comes to gay characters in X-Men comics, I feel like they are very stuck with just each other type of thing. But there's characters like Anole and Rockslide who are best friends. And anytime we've ever seen them, Rockslide is 1000% supportive of Anole being gay. And Anole is 1000% supportive of whatever the heck Rockslide is doing with his life. And I kind of wish we would have more instances like that. I know we have like Northstar and Dazzler as friends, but it kind of comes off as Northstar's a gay guy who's obsessed with this pop singer who's also an X-Man, so that's why they're friends. Like, I want to see more friendships between a straight and a gay character, or a straight and queer character in comics, because I feel like that's a huge thing that you don't see that much in comics. I know, even though it's not Marvel or X-Men, it was kind of shown a lot during Teen Titans with the character Bunker and Superboy. And I really loved that aspect of Teen Titans in the New 52 with Bunker and Superboy. It was very similar to a Nolan Rockslide. I would just like to see that more in comics.
Yeah, natural friendships without trying to make a statement.
Correct. And not trying to make
Organic.
Yeah. And I feel like sometimes when it has came to a straight character and a gay character, they only write it as the gay character is only friends with the straight character because they have a crush on them or something like that, and they're trying to convert them or something like that. And I don't want to see that. I just want to see them be friends.
Nobody wants to see that. No, now that I think about it, I think there's also not a lot of queer friendships in the X-Men. Like, most relationships are shaped by attraction in some way or other.
Yeah.
Like, I hope that is changing now, because I feel like we're getting some of that in X Factor and stuff like that. Like, it's friendship. But I think it could be interesting to talk about queer friendship generally. But I know, including the fact of other friends that are not necessarily queer, and friendship between queer people in the X-Men, because I feel like it's always either, that attraction or subtext. That, they're not like, they're like implied to be attracted, but you don't know. And that's not exactly so in friendship. And that's not exactly so in openly queer people having a friendship. That's so in two people having a friendship that you imply that is some kind of attraction, but it's not exactly so in community and friendship through those eyes. And I don't have a lot of straight friends, but I have a lot of friends whom I don't have absolutely no tension, and that would be nice. Also, not all of her friends are secretly in love with us, even if the X-Men tells us otherwise. But, I don't know. Oh,
I definitely agree with what you guys are saying. I feel like, particularly with the current run of lines, there is that lack of connection between a lot of the characters. Those small, intimate moments of friendship and family are missing. Like we had that entire issue with the foreground being Arrow getting back her powers. And despite her entire family being in the background, there wasn't really too much moments of that family. In that same, like
the
when Cena
story
Grace,
like
what was
served
that?
the larger ideal. There was no, it lacked the personal touch. It did. It was the
Yes.
big picture. It wasn't the focused details. It was the big picture.
Mhm. And I would love more of that focus on the personal touches, the friendships. When Cena Grace was writing X-Men, Iceman, he put that little hint where Iceman sent that text message blast to all these people, and it was these friendships that could kind of be touched up on more. Iceman and North Star, Iceman and Boom Boom, Iceman and Polaris as a friendship, not as a people who dated who probably really shouldn't have, and kind of just elaborate more on how these characters connect to each other, both between queer character and queer character, straight and queer characters, and even straight characters and other straight characters. Just having them go back more to that X-Men friendship that used to be there a lot more in years past.
I was actually reading last night, and I can't remember the issue now, but Harry's hideaway had been destroyed, and Beast and Warren had gone to fix it and do some repair work. And there was a lot of kind of back and forth between the two of them, and there was a lot of bonding going on in that particular issue. They get interrupted by a cop, and like their image inducers immediately activate, and it shows them like kind of giving each other noogies. I really miss stuff like that, when they would just kind of hang out outside of being superheroes and outside of being Krakoan, and they related to each other on a much more intimate level. Something I saw recently was a comment about Jean Grey and Storm's relationship,
Yeah.
because they're constantly being referred to as best friends, but we really don't get to see that much.
Where'd it go?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously still do love each other and care about each other, but we don't see them hanging out or having lunch or anything that would kind of give us a touchstone to really feel that.
Also, I feel like with Storm and Jean, it was also subtext a lot of times, and it seems like they can write friendship, you know.
Yeah, I think just, I mean, it's not a criticism, it's just an observation, is that a lot of the stories seem to be in the service of the overall picture and not the intimate moments. I think I think X Factor is going to be a little bit different in that regard, just based on what I've seen in the first issue. But I think Duggan's getting some of it right with Marauders. Yeah. I think the focus is Kitty and Emma, and everybody else is kind of peripheral at this point. I mean, that's if I go back and I check the issues, that's the relationship that's been explored the most over the last couple of books.
Yeah, and they've even gone into some of the others with how Iceman reacted to everything and the scene between Emma and Storm. I do think that of the comics that are currently out, that Dugan has been doing the best with having those moments where we get to see how the X-Men actually react to each other and connect to each other.
In that issue where Kitty had passed away and all the Marauders attacked that ship, I feel like I've heard so many people say that was one of their favorite issues. And I feel like a huge part of that is because of everyone's familyness or friendship or whatever, all of them losing their minds over losing a friend or a family member or a sister. So I feel like that should be an indicator of this is something that should be in books more often.
We want it. Give it to us, please.
Please also don't do it like in X-Men Goals, where they try to make Ileana and Kitty like sisters, and it was very weird. I just remember that popped into my head when you say sister. I was like, That word was all over the book, and it was super weird.
Everything in X-Men Gold was super weird.
Okay, I give you that.
So we actually have a comment that kind of connects and I think summarizes what we're talking about a lot pretty well, where it says that Jean and Storm's friendship has just seemed to be random moments of them saying, "You're my bestie," but then we have no backup of them actually being besties. And I think that that kind of sums things up a lot. It's like we're being told rather than shown it.
And someone made a comment on I suppose the Eliana Kitty one, and they were roommates, which was true also, but not the point. Okay, so to ask you a little more of fun stuff before thinking on how to close this, which is your favorite X-Men book? I want to know it.
Do you mean current?
Oh, you can say current and past, or you can say only past, or you can say whatever you want.
Okay. I'm current. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Dylan. Okay. So for me, my current favorite book is Marauders, with X Factor potentially coming to take the spot. It's only been one issue, so I can't say for sure. And my all-time favorite is Peter David's X Factor Investigations. It just hit everything that I love about the X-Men.
For me, my current favorite one, even though there's only been 2 issues, is Hellions, because I just feel like you can just sense that they are going to want to give story and history to all of the characters and not just focus too much on like Havoc and Psylocke, because they're like the head 2 of the book. There's been so much in only 2 issues that's given depth to characters like Grey Crow and Wild Child and even Empath, even though I don't like him. And I would say my overall favorite X title ever is Peter David's X Factor, just because, again, I like a writer that knows how to write a team and not just a book that has like Cyclops or Wolverine as the leader and they get all the depth while they have backup singers. I feel like Peter David really knew how to write a book that had at times like 12 characters.
Yeah, it's X-Force for me currently. A large part of it is because Domino's in there, but it's just that I just think Percy's actually found a balance of making a book, the sort of the violent, not the good guy team that X-Force is supposed to be, but he's also kept it funny and it still has an emotional center. And I think that's a real achievement with the book. So for me, it's definitely X-Force is my favorite book. My favorite book of all time. It's not actually a team book, but it's Gail Simone's Domino. That's my favorite run.
Well, that's because Gail does no wrong. But
Well, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say the original Uncanny run, because most of that was written by Claremont, and we got some amazing stories out of that. And I know people kind of criticize like a lot of the storytelling that was done in the 90s, but that's when I grew up reading. And even now, I still go back to those books and I love them. There was a lot of great characterization and storytelling. And like, again, yesterday I was reading, I think it was Uncanny 297, and Jubilee and Xavier have like a moment, and it was really beautiful. And I miss stuff like that. But for the current run, I'm going to have to say Marauders, just because it does have the kind of storytelling that I'm wanting and needing for my stories. It does have those moments of intimacy between 2 characters, and you understand that the motivation behind the characters is something. When you look at the character histories, it just feels so much richer for having that. X Factor, I really enjoyed the first issue, so this could change. But some of the stories that we have started so far with X Factor, I think is going to be, I think it's going to be amazing. Not just because of Amazing Baby, who I love, but I think that X Factor is going to give us something new that we haven't really seen before, and I think it's going to give some of the storytelling that we have been missing from some books.
And again, that's because Leah Williams is amazing and can't
She's
do any wrong either.
Right.
So amazing.
Oh, it's me.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna start with the old one because I don't know the new one yet. But the old one is New Mutants, and
It's always New Mutants.
yes, always New Mutants, and it's mostly because of what I mean. I feel the same thing reading it now that I felt when I read it for the first time when I was 14, and that's powerful for a book also. And I actually, with the time, have learned to love more the part of the Louise Simonson run, part that starts in the 50 issue. And I would recommend people to stick around after Inferno, even if you feel like all your hopes and dreams are shattered somehow, which is what I felt when I was a child. And it was hard to keep in the book after that because I was devastated, and I'm not wanting to make spoilers for a comic that has 40 years. So, but that would be my one, and also because I feel like there's a lot of artists that go through that book, like not only Bill Sienkiewicz, but also like Mary Wilsmore and June Brigman and a lot of people that were really great artists. I'm forgetting some now, Brett Belvins, and a lot of people that were great artists and that say a word that is very, I don't know, broad. Like you're gonna get some stuff that you like visually for sure, because it's very. And of the new ones, I must confess I'm not enjoying the new ones so far a lot, but that doesn't make me hate them. Like I'm not feeling them, but that doesn't mean I hate them because I feel like um in the past I have had this feeling before. Like I have been not loving something and later with time I have learned to appreciate it more. So I don't know if it's gonna happen. So I would say either X Factor or Helions are the ones that I'm feeling more, and also are the ones that have shorter runs. So maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll feel them even more. But yes,
Yeah,
I'm
potential.
like yes, I feel they have a lot of potential. I'm one of the few people that like it a lot. Fallen Angels. Uh, I know
I
it's not.
I loved Fallen Angels, like the first two issues, and then the others were not that great. But the first one I absolutely loved.
I love it. I don't think it's a perfect book, but I don't think neither of them are. So just it's shorter, and I don't know. I love the writing of giving Cyborg something different that was has gone through, like giving this character Quanon something that is not only like Betsy, 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 which is like I'm tired of Betsy, and also Magneto relating to her was beautiful, but that was my takeaway. So
I think for Fallen Angels, since it was a character that not many people know about, and then giving Quanon a villain that nobody knows about, it was just a whole lot of unknown for people, and we were already in an unknown world of Dawn of X. So I think that was a huge part of it not being that popular, was there was a lot of unknown. But I think there's some people, like I know at least me, I like the unknown and I don't like the A-list characters that much. So for me, it was awesome to have a book that wasn't Wolverine, Jean, or Storm leading.
Another book that I think doesn't get enough, that's current, that doesn't get enough love right now is the Empire X-Men tie-in. I think is absolutely hilarious and enjoyable and off the wall bonkers. Like I read it so quickly because I'm like, what the hell is happening? And I think that the fact that the entire X line of writers is taking turns on each issue. The first issue was written by Teenie Howard and John Hickman. The second issue by by Leah Williams.
Duggan, I think.
Yes, Duggan, and
There was a third.
Yeah, there was a third, and this most recent one was written by, I believe it's Vida Ayala and Zeb Wells, and I think one more. And it's just the fact that so many hands are in this, but it runs so smoothly. I am floored by that. And also, it just keeps getting more bonkers in my mind, and in a good way.
Exercise in bananas.
Yeah.
But it's also very much its own thing. It feels like it is very disconnected from anything else. It sits alone. There's a lot going on, and there's humor, and Warren's all over the place, and we're having himbo rights and everything else. But it just doesn't feel like it's part of anything. And maybe that's why it's so easy to connect to. It doesn't seem to be connected to the seriousness of all the other titles around it.
Yeah, I like. There's some points, like if I wanted to nitpick, where I feel like there might be some odd plot holes, particularly with the premise, but it's just so fun. I can't seem to care that much. I enjoy reading it, and that's what got me into the X-Men to begin with, is just the pure enjoyment I get from flipping pages.
Yeah, it's easy to read.
I think that book has a lot of great things, but I can't overlook. I'm sorry, but I can't overlook the fact that Wanda shouldn't have had that role in the first place of being the Roma witch that ruins the world. That's a really awful role and a really stereotyped role, and I don't know why they bring it again. Like that for me is bad taste.
Yeah,
that's a whole show.
Yeah,
yes, that's a whole show.
That's the plot holes I was talking about. That just to me makes no sense. Just the premise of what is she doing? Why is she doing it? How did she think this was a good idea? Exactly.
That was a bad decision when it was done in the past, and I don't know why they recreated it. But yeah, that's a whole show, and it's probably a show I want to plan and to do well. Like
just show on Wanda.
Yes, not only about Wanda now, but about Wanda mistreated repeatedly, because it's not a new thing. It's
but if you think about it, it was coming, because if you go back into, I don't know which issue it is, it might be an X-Men issue. The minute they made her the boogeyman, when they were telling the kids the story, when Exodus is telling the kids the story about the Pretender, you knew that they basically committed to the fact that
that something was going to happen with Scarlet Witch.
Something was going to happen. And that was kind of the foreshadowing for they've said, well, we're going to take that and we're not going to try reverse engineer it in any way. We're just going to run with that. And I don't agree with it personally, but that's, I was at it. That's, I said, it's a whole nother show. I'm not going to get into it.
Yes, we will do a show sometime about this, which we ought to plan well, just to land it well. Okay, so for the last thing, I want to ask you both what you want to see more in the fandom, just generally. And so we're closing on, I don't know, anything you want to see more on the fandom, and anything you enjoy about it, anything. Just like open thing. What you haven't said,
Go ahead, Regina.
Checked again.
I just want to continue to see the X-Men become a bigger fandom with the younger generation. I think I did a good job with my kids. So my oldest son, who is 22, I'm losing my mind here. He's always going back and like watching like the animated series, and he's introduced it to his friends, and his girlfriend is always telling me, Aaron really loves the X-Men, and he's in our House of X group. He doesn't participate that much, but I know he's become a member. And I just want to see that continuing. So he has a little boy now, so I'm looking forward to indoctrinating him into the X world.
3
More
generations of
more of
X-Fans.
us, more of us.
More of us, yeah.
I would like to see, when it comes to the fandom, a big giant wish that I'm sure everyone wishes that will probably never come true. But I would wish that the fandom could learn to like each other. I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but I love my house of groups because I want everyone to be able to get along. You can have difference of opinion without having to attack each other or hate each other, because that's what happens in the comics between humans and mutants. And we don't want that in real life. We just want to get along with everyone. So that's what I would hope to see with the fandom.
It also happens between mutants and mutants a lot.
Sure. I just realized that I sounded like Miss America and saying that I wish for world peace, but
it's good to have wishes like that. So.
I was applying that, like, okay, it happens between mutants and humans, as it's understandable, but it also happens between mutants and mutants, and that also happens. So I was like, I can work with this.
I want all of X-Men fandom to be like Krakoa, and Krakoa welcomed all of the evil mutants that hate the good ones, and the good ones all invited them. So just everybody get along. That's all.
I mean, as long as they learn not to kill people and that stuff, like I was mentioning the bad mutants, okay?
I mean, I'd like it if the fandom didn't kill people either, so I'm on the same page as you.
Yeah, I'm good with that too.
I mean, that's a good request for the fandom. I'm not. I won't say no to that.
That was an exaggeration, totally. But okay, so thank you so much for coming to the show. It was lots of fun, and I think the people watching it also have a lot of fun. Just based on the comments and that stuff. And okay, so just thank you, and I hope we can have you here sometime also for like some discussion that touches you and you want to come and everything, because that's like what I want to do personally. I think what we want to do is invite people to Mutant Watch to have discussions that are broad and that involve a lot of people, so it's not like the same people talking about every issue, because not every issue affects everyone exactly the same way.
Well,
so
thank you for having us, and me and Regina are definitely going to have one or all of you on our show. But yeah, thank you for letting us talk about nerdy things with you.
This was a lot of fun, and I'm so happy to be part of this fandom and part of this group, and so happy that you considered us to be on your show. So we really appreciate it.
Okay, bye everyone. Follow House of X on Twitter, it's right there. And follow What's the Mutants also for more.